Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and tonight we'll be focusing on the Suez Canal and the efforts of the Suez Canal Authority Chairman under the directives of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be developing the Bardawil Lake and the Bardawil Sinai development in general. The efforts of the authority to be developing the Suez Canal and the new Suez Canal, which was recently inaugurated in the past years under the auspices of His Excellency President al-Sisi. All this and more throughout the episode of the Daily Debate. And I'm honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Engineer Sherin and Naggar, the International Transport Consultant. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Anytime. First of all, we'll be starting straight away with the report about the meeting of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Rabia, and the directives given to be taking care and developing the Lake of Bardawil in the access of the Bardawil Sinai development under the auspices and the attention of the Suez Canal Authority. All this and more in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi directed the Suez Canal Authority Chief Osama Rabia to develop Lake Bardawil as part of the initiative of Bardawil Sinai development in cooperation with DEME Group. These development efforts aim to increase the production of Lake Bardawil of high-quality fish from 4,000 tons to 11,000 tons annually on the short term and up to 50,000 tons on the medium term. These efforts also contribute to the reclamation of agricultural lands and the enhancement of vegetation and afforestation in Sinai of an area of 15,000 square kilometers. The President gave his directives in a meeting with Admiral Osama Rabia to discuss the efforts made by the Suez Canal Authority and to be briefed on navigation rates in the Suez Canal. For his part, Admiral Rabia confirmed that the new Suez Canal that was opened in 2015 doubled the annual revenues of the canal, which exceed $7 billion. The new Suez Canal also contributed to reducing carbon emissions from vessels transiting it by a total of 53 million tons due to the canal's capacity increase and the reduction of transit time, thus supporting the canal's efforts to become a green canal by 2030. The 193-kilometer Suez Canal was opened in November 1869 and remains the fastest and most direct maritime trade link between Asia and Europe. Approximately 12% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, representing 30% of all global container traffic and over $1 trillion worth of goods per annum. In 2020, approximately 19,000 ships utilized the route. This represents 50 ships per day, making the journey between Suez Port and Port Said carrying between $3 to $9 billion worth of cargo. According to Egypt's Suez Canal Authority, SCA, the waterway carried over 1 billion tons of cargo in 2019, representing 4 times the tonnage transiting the Panama Canal during the same period. The Suez Canal is a significant route for energy, commodities, consumer goods, and componentry from Asia and the Middle East to Europe. The canal's location also makes it a key regional hub for shipping oil and other hydrocarbons. It enables the transfer of an estimated 7 to 10% of the world's oil and 8% of liquefied natural gas. Approximately 1 million barrels of oil traverse the Suez daily. In 2019, 53.5 million tons of ores and metals and 35.4 million tons of coal traveled the length of the canal. As supply chains and global trade have increased in quantity and complexity, maritime vessels have grown to meet demand. Container ships are the most common vessels used on the Suez Canal, representing 28% of all maritime traffic. In 2014, the SCA engaged in an ambitious program of canal widening to increase the daily capacity of vessels from 49 to 97 by 2023 at a cost of approximately $8.2 billion. The Suez Canal is a critical maritime passage for global supply chains and among the world's most significant trade checkpoints alongside the Strait of Hormuz, the Malacca Strait, and the Panama Canal.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Engineer Sherin Naggar, as we did see in the past report on the Daily Debate, the first of the episode for tonight, the efforts of the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, Rear Admiral Osama Rabia. How did he see them in the past couple of years?
A lot of development, and Admiral Osama Rabia is the type of person who works and doesn't talk.
Yes.
And that is a very important sign. He's not really the PR man who goes on television and saying, I've done this, I've done that. No, but he waits for things to be done, and then they are said that he has done them. He is a very low profile and a very hard-working person, and very professional, and also he is very open to new ideas and so on. If you look at the Suez Canal, I mean, in last May, the Suez Canal Authority signed a memorandum of understanding with the International Chamber of Shipping. And that memorandum is focused on developing cooperation between the two entities. This cooperation will enhance the knowledge of the international shipping world of the Suez Canal Authority's activities. To give you a brief example, we unfortunately in Egypt, we are very poor on international PR.
Yes.
To the extent that the International Chamber of Shipping delegation had no idea that there were 6 new tunnels under the Suez Canal built and operational. And during that visit, before the delegation left, Admiral Rabia insisted that there is a convoy that takes the whole delegation through the tunnels both ways, going into Sinai and coming back out of Sinai, to prove to the world that there are tunnels and we are connected, there is connectivity between Sinai and the mainland, which everybody still believes in the outside world that it does not exist, which is a shame. So that now is being corrected. The Suez Canal Authority is feeding information on its traffic, on its charges, on the new regulations to the International Chamber of Shipping, and that in turn is published to all the members. We are talking here, everybody who has a ship is a member of the International Chamber of Shipping. Every entity like the Intercargo or Intertanko or the Baltic Exchange or any of those big bodies, they all not quite fall under the umbrella of International Chamber of Shipping, but they have a very close relationship between them and the International Chamber of Shipping, which is a very important thing to have. And with the support of the Suez Canal and with the information flow between the Suez Canal and the International Chamber of Shipping, we expect to see a lot of development in that context. The other thing is that I need to highlight also during the COVID crisis in 2021, we had, there was absolutely nobody allowed to disembark or crew change. A lot of crew members were depressed. In fact, there has been a few suicide incidents. And when the Chamber of Shipping, the International Chamber of Shipping, the Secretary General spoke to Admiral Rabia, and I witnessed that conversation, and I can tell you on my responsibility, inside 2 hours, a lot has changed, and today Egypt is one of the major crew change points in the world. It is done professionally, it is done properly, and it doesn't take a blink if you say, oh, I got a problem with the crew change. The Suez Canal Authority will immediately intervene to solve the problem, even though this is an agency and a maritime transport matter rather than a Suez Canal Authority matter. But they are always there, they are always backing up the trade, they are always backing up the crew, they are always backing up everybody in the interest of the Suez Canal and, of course, ultimately the country.
Especially in the times of emergencies and crises, like you mentioned, Engineer Sherin and Naggar, the COVID-19, for example, in 2020, 2021, a lot has changed for the international maritime navigation through the Suez Canal. One other incident is the Ever Given or the Evergreen incident, and it was dealt with perfectly with the Suez Canal Authority and the crews of the Suez Canal Authority under the directives of Rear Admiral Osama Rabia. So how do you see the performances of the authority during times of emergencies in specific in the past 2 or 3 years?
There has been a remarkable improvement in responsibility. Let's face it also, to give the predecessor of Admiral Rabia his credit as well. He has worked very hard and he has handed over a system and a canal and a management system which has been improved a lot. And Admiral Osama is building on top of what he received, and he is doing a very professional job of it. The Ever Given situation has proven to the whole world two things: the importance of the Suez Canal, because the Suez Canal was blocked for 6 days, and it has proven to the whole world that there are people running the Suez Canal who know what they are doing and who are professional. In order to refloat a monster of this size, and I call it a monster because it's a huge thing, it's a floating mountain of containers.
Yes.
And that has grounded on 2 positions, forward and aft, and to refloat it in 6 days, fully intact, without any accidents, without any damages to the hull or to the machinery of the ship or anything. This in itself shows that we are the descendants of the pharaohs. Let's put it this way. If the pharaohs could build the pyramids, we can refloat a monster as big as the Ever Given.
The importance of the Suez Canal, as you mentioned, to the world as an international shipping maritime transport lane. How do you see the importance of it nowadays, especially in 2022 as we're approaching the end of it?
The Suez Canal Authority, I hope, will be gaining. I mean, that's the predictions on the international shipping markets. The Suez Canal Authority should enhance its revenues for a very simple reason. We are talking here about sanctions, and that will be shown next month, especially when the 5th of December sanctions start becoming in force. The crude oil coming from Russia will no longer be going into Europe. And that means that Russians will have to find an alternative market. And they already have found an alternative market, that being India and China. Simultaneously, the Europeans need to compensate what they have lost of Russian crude. So they are, of course, seeking from the Arabian Gulf. And I say Arabian Gulf more than the American crude, because the American oil and gas is being sold at phenomenal prices to Europeans. And you can see there is strikes every day. There is everywhere in Europe. I mean, be it England or be it Germany or be it Poland or everywhere, they are just there because there is a shortage of power and there is a huge surge in power costs, electricity, heating, and subsequently, of course, transport, and subsequently, of course, food. So the whole thing is affecting Europe tremendously. So Europe will need to purchase more crude and more gas from areas which are much less expensive than the Americans. Yes. And that is only the Arabian Gulf. So the traffic that did not exist in the past, which is crude oil moving from Russia east and crude oil and gas, of course, oil and gas, that is. I mean, I'm talking about energy moving east from Russia and energy moving west from the Arabian Gulf. That all should give us a much higher revenue. I think it's the Suez Canal Authority are being modest by saying 7 billion. I think in 2023, my personal anticipation will be something in the vicinity of $9 to $10 billion of revenues because of this surge in traffic.
The role of the Suez Canal, the new Suez Canal, the authority itself in developing the country in general, and more specifically Sinai, because you mentioned there are 6 new tunnels connecting both ways. How do you see the importance of the role of development, more specifically of the Suez Canal Authority?
The Suez Canal Authority is managing those tunnels as much as it is managing the waterway.
Yes.
And many other things, of course. But I have been through the Suez Canal tunnels a few times, and they are spick and span, very professionally managed, very accurate, very well controlled, and that's what you need. Now, if you're talking about developing Sinai, instead of having to wait for ferries to take you across the water,
yes,
and you have to wait for days and days before you can actually catch a ferry if you have a congestion, if you have a big project, for example, and you need to move thousands of trucks from the mainland into Sinai, that is now gone. There is no such thing as waiting. I mean, 10, 15 minutes, you're on the other side, be it from Sinai to mainland or other way, or the other way around. And that in itself is promoting a lot of business. I mean, if I'm a businessman today living, say, in Ismailia, and Ismailia is getting very choked, like all cities in Egypt, too much population, too much congestion, and I want to go out. Okay, fine, I'll go out and I'll build up a big factory out in the Sinai Desert or in the new Ismailia. And that is the idea, connectivity.
Yes.
Connectivity is very important. Transport is life. And be it maritime transport or be it land transport, it's life. I mean, even human beings. Look at a human body. A human body, if the blood is not transporting oxygen from A to B, or from the lungs to the body, there will be nobody. The body will die. So transport is life. And by having this transport network backed up by the massive expansion of road network, which is extremely important. A lot of people say, too many roads. Well, too many roads are already getting congested because the population growth is so massive that, I mean, I was just thinking today, my God, the poor president is going to have to build up another set of roads in the next 5 years, the way the population is growing. I mean, where are we going to get all this? I mean, it's very tough, but it is essential. Today, if any investor comes in and he wants to go from Eastport side into Upper Egypt, for example, he has no problem. He does not have to wait for days and days. It's going to cost him a lot less than having to wait. It's going to cost him a lot less to move his raw material from one place to another. It's going to cost him a lot less to move his finished product from one place to another. So that is why you need road, and you need good roads, and you need solid roads, and you need extensive network. Because I don't say, well, okay, fine, now we are going to be in Farafra. Oh, there are no roads to Farafra, forget about Farafra. But Farafra is very rich. I'm just giving you an example of one part of Egypt.
Yes.
Farafra is very rich in water, is very rich in a lot of things, but nobody can invest because there is no connectivity. Now there is. So you see, there is a difference. Now people are moving into Farafra. So by having good roads, by having good transport connections, then you can move the population, the density, you can diffuse that massive density along the Nile Valley into the whole area of Egypt. 1 million square kilometers is quite some square kilometers, and we are living on 5% of that, which is unfortunate. But now this is being changed. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be taking time and time and time, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And yes, there has been a lot of criticism on why we're building so many roads, why we're building so many bridges, why is this, why is that.
Yes.
But really, when you look at the ease of having to go from one place to another today is a lot better than what it used to be. To give you an example, on my recent trip in Europe, there was discussions about how to rebuild Libyan facilities, Libyan ports, Libyan development.
Infrastructure.
Generally the infrastructure,
yes.
and more of that. And almost everybody on that particular meeting said, well, you got Egypt next door, they got a fantastic road network, and you've got they've got the people they've got the manpower to support it, and they've got the transport system overall, which is very important, especially the road systems. So if this is being sounded overseas, that means that Egypt will not just be building Egypt, we will be building further beyond the borders of Egypt. And that is what the real target is.
You've mentioned a very important point, that the people overseas in different countries, like in Europe, like in Libya, in the Middle East, and other continents, they can see what is happening over here in the country in terms of investing billions of dollars in infrastructure, building roads and new cities and building tunnels and bridges all over Egypt. So do you think that this is the finished article? We don't need any new roads maybe for the upcoming 10 or 15 years, or is it just we always need new roads, we always need new bridges and new cities, and we need to expand until we reach every corner of Egypt, because the businessmen, not within Egypt, but from outside of Egypt, like from Europe or from the Middle East or the Gulf, they hear that we have better connectivity, so they think they have a better chance of investing here in the country and getting more money out of it?
Well, infrastructure is, of course, the basic requirement. Now, you need power, you need energy, which we are having. You need roads, which we are having.
Yes.
However, if you ask about need for more roads, I just made a comment that the president has got, if he has built, I think it was 9,000 kilometers of roads in the past 7 or 8 years, I think he's going to have to build another 9,000 shortly because of the population explosion, the population bomb we have in Egypt.
But is it enough for the investors?
It is enough for the investors, for sure. Because once Egypt goes beyond its border, no, also for us.
Yes.
Once Egypt goes beyond its borders, a lot of Egyptian labor is going to be going back to places like Libya, like Iraq, we're just waiting for stability. And I mean, they're not going to be spending another century being unstable. Eventually, this whole thing is going to calm down. And now there is talk also about the Egyptians going to Somalia big time. And Somalia is known for its very rich fisheries. It's known for its very rich meat and lamb and beef resources. Pastures are very big there. Okay, fine. They're having at the moment a massive drought, and they even have a famine. Yes. But again, this is something temporary. If this is getting properly organized, and you have the support of a country like Egypt, which is also a very poor country in water,
yes,
then they will know, they already have learned it in their own country. So when they start to apply this in a place like Somalia or a place where there's a drought, then they will be very effective. This will mean moving labor out of Egypt to Somalia.
Yes.
They're going to be producing money, they're going to be investing money, they're going to be earning money, and that money is going to come into hard currency, reflecting on Egypt. And that is what we really need. And also a recent development which not many people actually, has not been announced yet, but I'll take the liberty of announcing it because I feel it's the right thing. The Egyptian government, or not the government, but Egyptian authorities, academies, and all the authorities related to maritime labor,
yes,
are developing their tactics, they're developing their schemes in order to be able to provide the international maritime industry with professional seafarers. And that is extremely important because professional seafarers are going to be lacking next year. The estimated shortage of seafarers worldwide is exceeding 90,000. So
Do we have the potential to be having the skills?
We have the potential, we have the skills, we have the schools to provide that. There, of course, there are some what you call shortcomings, but
Yes.
these are to be addressed, and they are easily addressed.
You need experience.
They are easily addressed. I mean, if the Philippines, the transfer of Filipino seafarers tops $50 billion a year,
Yes.
and Philippines is somewhere remote in the world. Imagine the Suez Canal being there, and everybody going through the Suez Canal. We are less costly for transfer of crew from one place to another because they can just transfer in their own country, so no expenses to the owner. That will attract the owner. That is one thing. Generally, the Egyptian pound is pretty weak towards the dollar, which means that less dollars will be transferred, or less dollars will be paid, and in exchange there are going to be a lot more pounds generated here on account of dollar influx. There is a lot of potential. The potential is very big for Egypt.
Before going to the other report of the daily debate for tonight, how have the navigation rates in the Suez Canal progressed ever since the inauguration of the new Suez Canal, and what can be expected for 2023 in terms of development?
Well, the Suez Canal Authority is developing the southern sector now, where the Ever Given ran aground, which is because this is the narrowest part of the Suez Canal. My personal, and I repeat, my personal anticipation, it is going to be finished a lot earlier than the Suez Canal announces, because they always do that. They say we're going to take us 3 years, and they finish it in a year. So I will not be surprised one bit that this development will be finishing soon. But my personal anticipation, eventually, maybe not in my time, maybe a little later, the Suez Canal will have to be a two-way waterway. So the remaining 37 miles...
Every lane.
Every lane. So you will have one way going northbound, one way going southbound, eventually, I think. But of course, the southern part is very difficult because that is a hard sandstone and basalt terrain. So to dig a place like that is extremely expensive, and it's extremely difficult as well. You need a lot of dynamite, you need to detonate it a lot, and you cannot detonate a lot in the close proximity of the Suez Canal because you could affect the main waterway. So there is a lot of technicalities. I am a marine engineer, I'm not a construction engineer, so I cannot judge it very much, but I know for a fact as an engineer, yes, this can be quite tough. But tough is I mean, to the Suez Canal Authority and to the Egyptians these days, tough is nothing. It's just like having a cup of tea, you know.
Yes, not just for us.
Yeah.
We will be heading to the other report of the daily debate for tonight. The Suez Canal recording an all-time high in the daily traffic rate. All this and more in the upcoming report, so stay tuned.
Egypt's presidency of COP27 submitted on Saturday 3 draft documents to the countries participating in the conference in order to accelerate the pace of negotiation and reach a unanimous agreement in the final statement of the conference. UNFCCC releases COP27 draft deal with placeholder on loss and damage funding. The first document is an 11-page text comprising 18 articles, at the top of which is a call to commit to the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by reducing 43% of greenhouse gas emissions. It also calls for accelerating the pace of international efforts to reduce emissions according to the capabilities and challenges each country faces. The document also calls for providing the necessary funding for the Santiago Network for Research and Early Warning of Climate Disasters, which is released to the issue of loss and damage. On financing, the text highlights the need to invest $4 trillion annually in renewable energy to reach zero emissions by 2050, and the need for investments of $4 to $6 trillion annually for the international transition to low-carbon economies. However, developing countries need $5 to $6 trillion to meet their climate commitments before 2030, and accordingly, there is an urgent need to provide $100 billion in financing annually, which was previously approved but not met. The Sharm el-Sheikh initiative has been launched for dialogue between countries and major institutions to enhance consensus regarding a number of provisions of the Paris Climate Agreement concerning the financing of developing countries. The draft document welcomes the Sharm el-Sheikh initiative for a 4-year joint action in agriculture and food security and launching the relevant Sharm el-Sheikh website. It also highlights that climate financing is not sufficient to meet the needs of developing countries, which are estimated at $803 billion, and stresses the need to phase out the use of coal and fossil fuel subsidies. Another text was submitted by COP27 presidency addressing the loss and damage issue, proposing the establishment of new financing arrangements to assist developing countries. It focuses on repairing the damages endured by these countries and providing new resources from multiple sources. The text also stipulates establishing a fund to finance efforts to address loss and damage. It also calls for the establishment of a transitional committee to activate this new funding to be approved at the upcoming COP28 conference. A third proposal was also submitted calling for strengthening international efforts to mitigate climate change and enhancing international cooperation and dialogue in this regard.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Engineer Sherin and Naggar, as we did see in the past report, the COP27 was held here in Egypt in this month, during this month from the 6th to the 18th of November in Sharm el-Sheikh, the resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. The agreements made to be protecting navigation in a way that preserves the environment, preserves the climate for the upcoming generations, and to be eliminating the negative impacts of the climate change. How do you think this could be changing the face of navigation in the future? Maritime navigation.
If you ask my opinion, the biggest pollutants of the oceans are ships. And of course, they're also the biggest pollutants of the atmosphere, because ships burn heavy fuel, which is basically the lowest grade of petroleum refining. And you could see a lot of ships coming over, and there's black smoke coming out of the funnels and all that. This has been a critical issue for quite a number of years, even before the awareness of the environmental issues.
Yes.
The IMO has taken very serious steps towards reducing that, and now there is a lot of devices that you put on funnels and you put on engines that you reduce your emissions, like sulfur emissions, like carbon emissions. You have to use what you call scrubbers, which will clean up the smoke before it goes out into soot and into sulfur and so on. Now there is a lot of areas in the world under the code SECA, and SECA is sulfur emission controlled area.
Yes.
For example, the whole of Europe, you cannot sail on any fuel that contains high sulfur. You have to be very low sulfur content. Of course, this is at a cost. And but again, it makes a big difference. Egypt in itself has already started by, like the Porto Damietta, for example. They will not allow you to run your generators in port.
Yes.
When you are in port, we have the energy, we have the electricity. Disconnect your generator, switch it off, and we will give you power from shore. You pay for it naturally, but it will be saving you as a ship owner some money, and at the same time saving me as a country the damage to the environment. That is very important, and I think this will be coming soon more. It will become implemented more in various places. Of course, Suez Canal Authority cannot do that because ships are moving all the time. They are under their own power. But there are other things, like, for example, ships dropping ballast into the channel, or dropping their ballast before they come in, or dropping sewage water. Sewage water is a very dangerous issue.
Yes.
Even though it must be treated before being dumped overboard, it is still causing environmental problems. And these issues are currently being addressed. So eventually, I think we need to see how we can benefit from these problems as Egypt, because we need every aspect of shipping to be addressed in Egypt. Now, the Suez Canal Authority has been very active. If ships are smoking too much, or they would just stop them. They would require the class to come on board and verify that that ship is smoking too much, and they get fined very heavily, which, I mean, you get fined anywhere in the world. If you go in and you pollute the atmosphere, they don't expect them to thank you for it. So it does, I mean, again, then to come to the next point, which is the Suez Canal tariffs. Yes. The Suez Canal has announced a couple of months ago they are increasing the tariff by certain percentages. I think that's 10 or 15%. They have, in consideration to the market, they have actually frozen the tariff for several years.
Yes.
And they have been causing incremental increases, very minimal. Just to help the industry generally. Now that the industry has started to take off, I mean, some of these container carriers are making billions, literally $40 billion, $37 billion a year. So it's only fair that the Suez Canal Authority, which are using up and down all the time, that we share a part of that income. But again, on the reverse side, the Suez Canal Authority is offering rebates. And these rebates are offered to certain ships that qualify to becoming rebate eligible by comparing the routes. If, for example, you're coming from one place in the west and you're going to the east, say in India or into Pakistan or further down, and the route you use will take you through the Suez Canal at a cost, and but there is an alternative route that will take you around the Cape at maybe a bigger cost, but still you can use it. It is still economical for you to use it, and the Suez Canal Authority will adjust its rebate in such a way that, okay, fine, you pay the full amount, and then you tell me, you show me what your documentation you have proven that you have used that route throughout, and then I will give you an agreed upon rebate. I will refund you back 10%, 15%, depending on the route and depending on the circumstances and so on. Of course, with the horrible increase of bunker fuels these days, this, of course, is an advantage to the Suez Canal Authority, because they are still giving rebates, but yes. The rebates should not be as high as they. But they, of course, they have their own economic division, which is very well informed, and they have their finger on the pulse. So there's no worries about that.
In terms of development as well, in the field of system, how the operating system works at the Suez Canal Authority, the vessel traffic management system is newly operating there. How do you see the importance of getting such a system, and of course getting the crews to be getting more about it and the skills how to be operating it for the future?
The Suez Canal Authority has built up this simulator center. Yes. And that center, they are training pilots regularly, even the Suez Canal pilots, because, you know, in the Suez Canal or anywhere in pilotage, you can be a pilot for a category, a certain category of tonnage. Let us say, for example, a 10,000 tonner. I mean, I'm not familiar with how they grade them in the Suez Canal, but a pilot who can pilot a ship going through the Suez Canal at 10,000 tons does not necessarily mean that he can take a 50,000 tonner through the Suez Canal.
Yes.
And ships, for example, like the Ever Given, must have 2 pilots on board, not the one, and 2 senior pilots on board, one on each wing, because it's such a massive ship, and you need observation from 2 sides. And the 2 pilots will coordinate with the wheelhouse, with the steering wheel, together through the captain or through the duty officer. That's how it works. But generally, no, the Suez Canal Simulation Center is very big, is very advanced, and they are constantly upgrading it. I think the president has just inaugurated the new simulation system, and he was actually chatting with the pilots over there and talking to them, in a friendly way. And the president is always very much direct to everybody he deals with, which is something very important. Of course, it was very encouraging for the team of the Suez Canal Simulation Center.
On the other hand, the Suez Canal Zone, what is the Suez Canal Zone standing for nowadays in terms of investments? Can they draw in more investments, pumping more investments from the outside world in this field, the development axis along the borders of the Suez Canal?
Suez Canal Authority and Suez Canal Economic Zone are hand in glove.
Yes.
The Suez Canal Economic Zone, I am delighted to say, I have seen on my trip to Europe, I have seen their advertisements in various European televisions, which is something that thrilled me, actually.
Yes.
It means that, okay, fine, now we're looking at an international exposure. The Suez Canal Economic Zone could have been much faster in its development, but not many people, again, our general problem in Egypt is lack of international PR.
Yes.
Be it Suez Canal Authority, be it Suez Canal Economic Zone, be it any other authority in Egypt. And this is something the government needs to address, and it needs to address very fast. Because as much as good publicity does not filter out, bad publicity filters out very quickly. And we need to counteract both good publicity and bad publicity. I mean, some time ago, I started getting calls from various authorities in various parts of the world, in Norway, in England. Hey, what happened? What's the Suez Canal blocked? Suez Canal is not blocked. No, we've seen that. Apparently, it was one of those YouTube stations that showed a film of a container ship exploding and snapping in half in the middle of the Suez Canal. Rubbish. This never happened. Right, you see, I said, okay, fine, you've got captains in the Suez Canal, call them. Nothing has happened. The Suez Canal is running normal. And, the Suez Canal is the most protected waterway in the world, to the extent that during the crisis in Egypt, during the revolution and all that, the Islamic Brothers and all the Suez Canal traffic did not stop for 1 single hour. It was managing all the time. And in fact, the gentleman running the security show at the time said, if something as big as a mosquito comes anywhere near a ship, it will connect with a missile. Nobody can come down near the Suez Canal. So this is where we are. We have to protect it. I mean, the Suez Canal is the only regular source of hard currency to the country. Okay. There is tourism, there is other sources as well, but they are fluctuating all the time. They are subject to various economic status, political, you never know. But the Suez Canal is always there and is always going to be there. It has to be protected well, which it is. It has to be managed well, which it is. And it has to develop, which it is developing. I mean, with the new canal now, we have been able to increase there was a visit of the Baltic Exchange chairman of the Suez Canal, and during that day, it was a record. That was the 3rd of October. The record transit volume was 89 vessels in Suez Canal history. I think they already cracked the 90 figure. So, yes, we need to develop it. And all the voices who said, no, this is unnecessary, it's unwarranted, why should we spend so much money on developing the Suez Canal? This is why. Because one of these days the traffic is going to go up and we are not going to be able to cope with it. So let's be ready for it. And we have been ready, and the Suez Canal is already earning what it should be earning. If that development had not taken place, you will not see that figure of 7 or 6, 5 or even 3.
But how can we be investing more in terms of marketing the Suez Canal, the efforts of the Suez Canal Authority, the Suez Canal Zone, the development axis? How can we be marketing this more for the outside world? Because you mentioned that you were in Europe and you did see the advertisements.
Yes, but as far as the Suez Canal Authority is concerned, the Suez Canal, it is imperative that the cooperation, and that is a very good step taken to sign a memorandum of understanding with the International Chamber of Shipping, and the cooperation between the two. Now, through the ICS, which is the shipping body of the world, they will be telling everybody. That in itself is PR. That in itself is marketing. So if I don't know about the Suez Canal, I'm sitting somewhere in Taiwan or Hong Kong or someplace, no, now the ICS will tell me, oh, wait a minute, there is this and this and that in the Suez Canal, which you did not know about. You see? So this is the Suez Canal Authority's thought behind that is to develop awareness of the industry of what the Suez Canal is really doing. Like they always said on one of the advertisement or one of the discussions, they said, well, you know, the Suez Canal Authority, as much as the Egyptian Authority, the Suez Canal Economic Zone, and other parts of the world, they have to come collectively and tell the world, wake up to what Egypt is doing, because Egypt is doing a hell of a lot of things, but nobody knows.
Hopefully we can get the message to the world. Engineer Sherin Naggar, the international transport consultant, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you very much for having me.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.